We'll do it live.
Okay.
No. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Fucking thing sucks.
Hello, hello. Welcome to Open Wide for Some Soccer. My name is Seth Bertelny. With me this evening, Pablo Maurer, Thomas Floyd. Guys,
hello.
Hey.
Hi.
Hey. Hey.
I can verify I am here as well.
I have a cough. Apologies ahead of time if I start hacking in the middle of the show.
What's going on, guys?
Nothing. How are you doing, Seth?
I'm good. I was actually mentioning to you guys before the show, remember when we used to talk a lot about Long Tan?
Wait, who's that?
It's been a little while since we mentioned him. I feel like we have to provide some sort of an update. I think he's still...
I mean, don't look at me for one because I don't have one for you.
I don't either.
I saw the All-USL first team this season. It was released today. Not on it. Not sure what happened there.
He was also just in... he was just in Washington, D.C. We missed a massive opportunity to stalk him and, you know...
He didn't call us or anything.
You know, DC United, I feel like it's safe to assume that one of, if not both, Sabarillo and Igbonanike will leave during the offseason. Could use another forward. Maybe someone who's familiar with the Ben Olsen system. Shown a history of scoring goals in American soccer.
So, Leonard Pahoy?
Obviously. I was thinking Connor Doyle, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that Long Tan is still doing reasonably well because pretty much whenever he scores a goal, people tweet at the Open Wide for account. They tweet at the three of us, and it seems to be happening somewhat frequently. So I think he's at least still doing fairly well for Arizona United.
Guys, as always, we're taking your calls all night long, or at least waiting patiently for somebody to call and then not answering any calls. 708-LT-OWFSS. Talk about DC United, Major League Soccer, the North American Soccer League, United Soccer Leagues, the U.S. national team, the U.S. women's national team.
Your local ODP team.
Politics, Billy Bush, really anything. Just give us a call.
Please don't make us get halfway through the show and then have Pablo have to start begging people to call us.
I don't like doing that. So what do we have to talk about?
For the record, I just brought up the stats. Long Tan led Arizona United in goals and assists this season. 10 goals, 6 assists.
Can't even get a first team mention?
Apparently not.
Did he at least make the second team? Is that not out yet?
I believe it was released. I did not look at it.
Wow.
So, I'm sorry.
Let's talk about DC United. I mean, should we, or should we just not talk about anything?
It seems like a good idea.
I mean, we have to take advantage of this opportunity with them being the best team in MLS. I mean, it's not going to come around very often. We gotta grab hold of this. 4 straight wins, guys.
They may be right now the best team in MLS. You know, given their current form.
They have the longest winning streak in MLS. So
yeah, maybe them or
ergo, they are the best team in MLS.
Yeah. Just doesn't feel right to say that.
It's strange. I mean, there are a number of reasons why this doesn't feel right, but I guess right off the bat, 2 of their best players for the entire season have not even been part of this run.
Yeah, Sean Franklin, Marcelo Sarvas. I think Sarvas in particular was kind of considered the player who was largely keeping them afloat during some of the tougher stretches earlier this season. So
I'm gonna go ahead and say that I thought their playoff chances were over when he went down. I thought it was curtains just because he was, like you said, sort of their glue.
And the player who replaced him, Rob Vincent, before Sarvis went out, he played very sporadically, and when he did play, it was as a winger. He didn't even play this holding midfield role.
Or for the Pittsburgh Riverhounds.
Yeah, he scored a lot of goals. He's more of an attacking player. He scored a lot of goals with Pittsburgh last year.
Yeah, he's one of those players who I guess making the jump from a lower tier to the top division in the U.S. I guess it took a while for them to figure out what his best position was at this level, because they tried him at a lot of different places. They tried him on the left flank, he played a little on the right flank, then he played in one of the advanced midfield roles, and now he seems to have really found a home as the deep-lying playmaker, backing up Sarvas and filling in during this spell when he was injured.
Yeah, and how about Nick DeLeon as well? The beginning of the season, we saw the central midfield experiment kind of fizzle out after about a month or so.
I feel like it lasted a little longer than that, even though we all were in agreement that it was not really working out and that it never particularly seemed like the best fit. Just his game didn't seem to really lend itself to being a central midfielder. I mean, he had the physicality to be a ball winner in that role, but just his type of passing game and his tendency to run at defenders seems to be best utilized out wide. And I feel like we've been discussing for years now the possibility of him being a good right back. He's gotten minutes here and there at that position for three seasons, I think, like sporadically, maybe when they're trailing. But to see him actually get this extended run out, he's really thrived there.
Well, let's talk about something then. I was at training today. Sean Franklin, to me, looked like he's approaching full fitness. Sarvis, probably about 75%, trained with the team for about 40 minutes and then was on the side. Are both of those players locks to just waltz back into the starting lineup? I think Franklin, we were talking about this earlier. Franklin, to me, seems like a lock, not necessarily to you.
Yeah. I think they should both come back into the lineup, and I think they both will. But if I were to pick one over the other, I feel like Sarvas is a more obvious upgrade over Vincent, who has filled in well, than Franklin is an obvious upgrade over DeLeon, who, while he isn't as defensively reliable as Franklin, has brought a new dynamic to DC's attack, has brought some overlapping runs that maybe Franklin doesn't make with as much frequency. And for that reason, if I'm choosing between the two, and again, I would put them both back in, I think Sarvas is the more obvious player to inject right back into the lineup.
Which is odd to say, because I could pretty easily make an argument that Franklin has been DC's most consistent player throughout the entire year.
Yeah.
Really tough to think of any sort of game where he stood out in negative light. And
Sarvas has had a couple off games, commit some fouls, get a lot of yellow cards. Yeah.
I think regardless of who starts, when Sarvas and Franklin are both back healthy, United is going to be as deep as they have been in a long, long time. When you look at who's on the bench, so let's say that both of those guys go back in the starting lineup. So on the bench, you have Vincent, you have DeLeon, you have Nagel, you have Sabarillo, you have Igbananike. That's
Colin Martin.
Colin Martin could theoretically also be on the bench. But I think over the last few years, that has been a real problem for DC United is their lack of depth. Whenever players got hurt, there just wasn't really a lot of good options behind them. And now, with the emergence of a couple of these guys, DeLeon and Vincent in recent weeks, they look to have a lot of options on the bench.
Yeah, I think this year, to put it bluntly, is the second half of this year has been the first time you look at United's bench and you think to yourself, all right, they're difference makers there. The past couple of years, you get the lineup sheet, you look at the bench, and you're just like, I hope they're not down by a goal, the 60th or 70th minute, because I'm not sure, how any of these players is going to move the needle. But you have to. Nagel is their leading scorer and can't crack the crack the 11.
Nagel's been on fire for the last month and a half in his role coming off the bench, and that's one of those where I guess he had 2 goals in the game he started, so maybe this argument doesn't make sense, but he seems to really thrive those late game situations where space opens up and he's able to run at defenders on the counter and pick out passes in that type of situation. So maybe him coming off the bench is not only good depth, but it's finding players who fit those roles.
Like a Didier Drogba, difference
Yes.
maker off the bench. Exactly. Yeah.
Perfectly happy to be a team guy and play off the
Pitch
bench.
in and contribute.
Yeah.
Lamar Nagel, as far as I know, has not refused to be in the 18
I don't
upon
think-
learning he wasn't in the starting lineup.
I don't think Lamar Nagel would be back on the team the next day, as opposed to Drogba, who can apparently just
That might be the end of Lamar Nagel's time in MLS
yeah,
if he did that.
exactly.
I want to look at this run they've been on sort of as a whole. They won the first 2 games of this streak. It was at home against Orlando and Columbus, and we said, okay, those are good wins because they need points, but they're against teams that are going to miss the playoffs in the East. Maybe we'd like to see them stretch it out a bit, and now they have. They've won at Toronto, and then they've won at home very convincingly this weekend against New York, a team that's near the top of the East. So, I mean, what has it been in your guys' mind that's been different in these last few games, maybe in the last month or so, that has made United, one of the best teams in MLS heading into the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, they've also, but just to add to that, they've also scored like a bushel of goals on the road, even where they've been just historically awful.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So, what do you think, Thomas?
I think this has been the culmination of the road they set themselves on mid-season when they changed the formation, when they brought in players who better fit that formation, and really made some savvy deals, bringing in Patrick Mullins, bringing in Lloyd Sam. We saw the dividends for that almost immediately. Mullins started scoring goals. Sam had some assists in his first game or two. But it took a little while for just the whole unit to come together in this kind of way. And now that's happened, you really see the chemistry. Like up top, it's not just that Nyarko, Sam, and Mullins are producing. They clearly understand each other. Like you look at the goal Mullins scored, it's this situation where Nyarko makes the run that normally Mullins would make, and then Mullins peels off and makes the far post run and is there to bury it. And that's 2 players who understand each other, recognize the type of movement the other player is going to make. You're seeing it with Lloyd Sam too. The team has really thrived on his set piece service. We saw another goal off a corner kick he hit from Boswell this weekend, and I think we're seeing the product of just a couple months of playing with him, players understanding where he's going to hit the ball, him knowing what spots to put those services in to connect with Boswell, to connect with Birnbaum. It's just chemistry, I think.
You're seeing a lot of balls played into space, which is not something that's been United's trademark. A lot of crafty runs and sort of combinations that just hasn't been the case. I think another difference maker, and it's somebody who I'm going to just go ahead and say I probably sort of wrote off mid-season, as Bobby Boswell, who sort of came roaring back, even offensively. All of a sudden has sort of been a difference maker for them on set pieces and just getting in the box and fucking shit up,
making his trademark couple runs up the field every game.
Bombing,
he almost had a goal off a volley this weekend.
No, that was him putting in the cross.
Birnbaum.
And
right, yeah.
Yeah,
it was that I mentioned that to him today, and he said, "Yeah, it was the your typical right midfielder to center back, and then play across the area to the other center back for full volley."
Yeah.
He said that. He said, "Quote: I think Steve ruined our chance at lifetime infinite glory." So, but he is somebody who just sort of you thought he was going to be one of those players who just falls off steeply, and he's been sort of off a step speed wise all year, and instead he seems back to one of the premier defenders in the league.
Yeah, mid-season, I thought United should perhaps give a shot to a guy like Jalen Robinson, young, homegrown, who has looked sharp in very limited opportunities to play. And Boswell, for what it's worth, he did get benched for that one game when they put in Opare at Philadelphia, went with a Birnbaum-Opare duo with a healthy Boswell on the bench.
That did not end well.
That game went very poorly for United, and that was the last time Boswell was benched. But it shows that it was on Olsen's radar, that this isn't just people in the media creating a speculation, where they were never going to bench Boswell. It was on the fringes of happening, and he won his spot back and has been pretty sharp ever since.
I even wonder, of anybody in that locker room, Boswell is maybe the most competitive. And I sort of wonder, just speculating, if being paired up with this up-and-coming young national team defender who's getting a lot of buzz drives him to be better. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Or also, did sitting for that one game, did understanding that his spot was vulnerable also feed into that, make him more competitive and want to keep his spot?
Yeah. I think that there are some interesting parallels that we've discussed between DC United this season and last season's MLS Cup champion Portland Timbers. The Timbers, late in the season, were on the verge of missing the playoffs. They were outside the playoff spots with about a month left. They switched their formation, moved Darlington Nagbe, who we're going to talk a little bit more about later. They moved Nagbe into the middle, and all of a sudden that change in formation just spurred them on a run where they didn't lose for the rest of the season, and they took it all the way through the playoffs, and they won MLS Cup. Now, Portland's formation change was a little later in the season than DC United's. DC United changed formations around mid-season, but I think we're seeing some parallels where this change of formation is really spurring United on, and it seems plausible now that they could just keep this run going because they're getting hot at the absolute right time of the season. They're on their first win streak of the year, and there's one game left in the regular season, so they could just keep this going, and I think just like Portland, you can point to that formation change as the real catalyst.
I mean, I think I agree with you, and I think it's tough to bet against DC United right now, but I will point out that I think the sort of narrative that you have to be firing on all cylinders as you head into the playoffs is a little false, in that you've seen examples. Thomas and I, you and I were talking about LA in 2013 and plenty of other teams that sort of hobbled into the off season and then just sort of turned it on. I mean, it really is like a new season.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think it was 2012 with LA. Yeah, but
that's what I meant.
But yeah, the funny thing also is the playoffs are now 6 weeks long, so the team that is playing well right now, that is clicking
might
on
not
all
be
cylinders
in a month and a half.
Like,
I mean, how many teams in MLS can play well for 3 months continuously, which is what DC will have to do. I mean, it would be just as easy for, I don't know, Montreal or Philly or any of these other teams to just get hot and stay hot. So I mean, it's MLS. There's just like I go through this in my head every single time. There's like 0 point in speculating about the playoffs, because you can look at every team that'll qualify for the knockout round, even all 12 of these teams. And, is there one team that you honestly would say this team has, no chance of winning MLS Cup?
The Union.
You really think that? I mean, think about how they're playing the first half of the year.
Yeah. No, you're right. And I think when you mention those two teams, Philadelphia and Montreal, those are the two teams that United has a chance of playing in the first round. It's going to be one of those two. So I think it's worth speculating from United's standpoint which of those they would rather face. I mean, all they have left to play for on the season's last day is hosting one of those two knockout round games.
I think you want Philly. I mean, I think with Montreal, I mean, especially if it's first of all, you want home game, period. And
they're in good
which is
shape.
not a possibility. I mean, if they're going to face Philly, it's going to be at RFK. But I don't think you want to play Montreal. I mean, especially on the road with Piatti, with who knows, maybe Drogba now has a fire lit under his ass after all this stuff.
I mean, Lawrence Simon holding things down at the back. The talent's there for Montreal.
Who knows what the weather will be like if they play up there? It could be cold as hell. Philly. I genuinely think if they play Philly, there's also this sort of added little, bit that I think United would get up for that game. Not that they wouldn't get up for any opponent, in the playoffs, but I think there is a sort of budding little rivalry there, and they don't want to lose to a team that's 100 miles north. I mean, I think all those things play into it.
With
Former
several,
United players.
former players,
Yeah,
both on the roster.
These guys want to
technical
lose
staff.
to Pontius?
Yeah.
Please.
Ben Olsen doesn't want to lose to Ernie Stewart.
Yeah, exactly. Go way back.
Yeah. And I think it would be good to see that rivalry that the league and the teams have really tried to push.
Especially the league. Especially the league.
They've tried to push that rivalry in a very non-organic way. To actually see it build up over the course of an actual playoff match, I think would be beneficial for both teams going forward. And then, not to say that the Union, they have a lot of talent, and just a couple months ago at the trade deadline, I thought they made the moves that made them perhaps best equipped
Agreed.
to handle the stretch run.
Agreed.
But things just haven't worked out that way. Charlie Davies hasn't really gotten any sort of groove coming off the bench. Maurice Adu still isn't back. He was on the bench for the most recent game.
It was sort of oddly timed Tranquilo Barnetta news.
Yeah.
Just sort of weirdness.
That was supposed to motivate them, right? Like
Yeah.
win
Let's
one for
win one for
Tranquilo.
Tranquilo.
Yeah.
Josh Yarrow's injury, which means, and the combination of that and Adu not being healthy means they are pretty much locked into this Marquez Tribbett center back pairing that has looked vulnerable at times this season. So there are some holes in the Union team, I think, whereas Montreal, it just seems like it's a locker room, a chemistry thing. And if they get on the same page, that team has so much talent that you could see them going on the deep run.
My attitude is, if you who would you rather play on a good day for the opposing team? I'd rather play Philly.
Yeah, I think
Montreal on a good day,
and that's mostly Drogba factor.
Yeah.
Drogba, the extremes of what he can give you are so different. Drogba on a good day is unstoppable.
Yeah.
But you could also get Drogba on a I don't give a shit day.
Let me by the way, not that Jim Curtin is listening right now, but I did a GoFundMe campaign to pay for some gear for the Papua New Guinea U20 women, and Jim Curtin gave $200. Isn't that great? I mean, it's like classic Jim Curtin. He's like the nicest guy in the entire world.
Yeah, Jim Curtin's great.
Yeah.
You should give props to everyone who donated to that.
Yeah, Thomas donated.
Thank you.
Seth's girlfriend donated. And that's the end of the list of people associated with us in this room that donated.
But I tweeted some stuff out.
You didn't even tweet, so you retweeted. You donated a retweet, which is like what I did today for a GIF of a dog trying to get pizza out of a box.
That tweet
Wait, seriously?
probably.
Let me find it.
That tweet probably got you more donations than a single donation that I was gonna give.
Right? Yeah. Whatever $1.50. Sorry, give them what I can.
My donations go to PBS and most recently
The Hillary Clinton
attempting
campaign.
to avert the apocalypse.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
Well, since we're talking about the impact already, what do we make of the Drogba controversy from this weekend?
It's sort of interesting.
Oh. Okay. Oh.
Chad Ashton as a player.
Whoa!
Yeah, he played in MLS.
Who did he play for? Dallas?
1996 Dallas Burn. I'll
Okay.
give you this. It's like no help.
That team played the Rhinos and lost to them in the Open Cup.
What?
Yeah, famously, that was where you may remember there's a quote from Jason Kreis where he was like, they had to play on the Rhinos' narrow baseball field stadium and was like, well, we lost to them here, but let's get them on a real field.
Yeah.
And then, of course, years later, he was the one playing at Yankee Stadium.
I feel like
God. You just did that in one step.
that doesn't count. Well,
but he still hasn't connected him to a Rochester Rhino.
I was gonna say that doesn't
yeah.
count for 6 degrees of Rochester Rhinos, but I
gonna
feel
give
like
it
he
to
should
him-
almost win.
I'm
just
going to
for
give it to
that.
him just on
Yeah.
on sheer autism.
Yeah.
I'm going to give it to him anyway.
He played with Jason Kreis, who coached Ethan White, who played with John McCarthy on the Rochester.
Jesus Christ! All right.
Or wait, I actually got that wrong. Ethan White was post Jason Kreis at NYCFC, so I get there somehow.
All right, whatever.
Brian Mira played under Jason Kreis.
All right, that's enough.
Ryan Mira played with Johnny Steele. There you go.
Oh, God. That's enough 6 degrees of Rochester Rhinos for today, I think. What were we going to talk about? Sorry.
Drogba.
Yeah, God.
So-
what a just completely... God, dude.
So, in case anyone missed it, Didier Drogba was told by Impact head coach Mauro Biello prior to Sunday's game against Toronto FC that he was not going to be in the starting lineup.
For the record, a completely reasonable decision if you've been
Yeah.
watching the Impact over the last
Well,
month
you know
or
what's
so.
weird is our friend Matt Doyle had read something he wrote a few weeks ago where he phrased it this way. He said that Biello just has to sort of like pull himself together and like face Drogba and be like, we have to use you off the bench. And I thought to myself when I read that, he's not going to have to go to those lengths. I mean, he's like a 38-year-old, like. He probably wouldn't even care, is what I thought. Turns out he still really fucking cares.
Yeah, so to Biello's decision, Drogba responded, if I don't start, I'm not going to be on the game day roster. And Biello said, okay, you're not on the game day roster. So with one game left in the regular season, I sort of figured that was the end.
Yeah. Well, it would be like in Italy or something the next day.
Right, like on the bench coaching Chelsea. Today's...
Well, wasn't he was like connected to Napoli or something like that?
Yeah,
There was a transfer rumor.
There were that particular rumor, which we ran a version of at goal.com.
Of course.
Just citing the report, was that it was one of those MLS off-season loans.
Okay. What? God. That
Wait,
makes even less sense. So like,
as if he's coming back next year.
Jesus Christ. Got to keep him fresh. Like.
So today's news was surprising to me that they apparently held a clear the air meeting, and at the end of it, Drogba agreed that he would just accept Biello's decision from here on out and remain with the team.
God, he has put them through the ringer this year. Like, this year started with Joey Saputo being like, yeah, I'm really not even sure what's going on with any of this, and like, for right now, he's going to play. And then he played, and then he was like,
but not on turf. He took the first month of the season.
Yeah, and then he was
off.
like in the Middle East randomly for like a couple of days.
Then he was
charity
training
game.
with the Sacramento Republic.
Yeah, like how did the Impact let him put them through all this?
Yeah, I mean, this is a divorce that's been brewing for the entire season, which is why I thought that this weekend was the last straw. I mean, if he refuses to play,
Didier
that's
Drogba
it.
is like this smoking hot girlfriend, and the Impact are the dude who's just like probably should have dumped her a while ago, but are just going to ride this out until she leaves.
But the thing is, it seems, at least if you want to believe what Joey Saputo said, that Drogba is the one who sort of come crawling back and accepted the Impact's terms.
Maybe there was some, I don't know, maybe there's some contractual obligation, obviously. The guy obviously wants to get paid, I have a viewer request for 6 degrees of Rochester Rhinos. Can we do it?
All right, lay it on me.
It's an interesting one, too. All right, hold on a second.
I'm ready for this.
Jamie Vardy.
Okay.
What did he get from Leicester to...
Jamie Vardy is teammates with Christian Fuchs, who follows me on Twitter.
No, come on, man. Jesus.
You just wanted to tell people that he follows you.
He follows tons of people. He follows thousands of people on Twitter.
Yeah, back up.
All right. Jamie Vardy. Oof. Well, let's see. He's teammates with Wes Morgan, who plays on the Jamaica national team.
Oh.
That's a big one.
Yeah. With Kamar Lawrence, who
So
played
the
on the Red Bulls with Dax McCarty, who played with Johnny Steele.
God damn, dude.
That was good.
that was legit impressive.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. So we'll see what happens with the Drogba clusterfuck. But again, I mean, would any of us be surprised if he just waltzed in and lit it up for 3 games in the playoffs?
We've been saying for a while that he seemed to be coasting, but that we were pretty confident that come playoff time he would turn the switch on. And I think this whole thing maybe puts that in doubt. But I could still see it happening.
You take Didier Drogba on cruise control over like any number of MLS strikers operating at full throttle.
I will say in Biello's defense, Mateo Mancoso, probably mispronouncing that name. He's played pretty well for the Impact. 3 goals, 4 assists. He's only started 7 games, pretty limited minutes. So he's been a solid player for them. So starting him over Drogba is not crazy. Like, they have a decent option at that position.
I also think that playing Drogba for 20 or 30 minutes off the bench could be the most effective way to use him at this point.
Yeah, that was his role.
Didier
in the
Drogba
last
does not agree, but yeah,
I guess not.
That was his role in the World Cup for the Ivory Coast, and I thought he played it really well. Every time he came off the bench, there was a jolt of excitement and energy that really seemed to spark them. I mean, they still got eliminated in the first round, but
there was an exciting spark of energy.
Yeah.
Yes.
I want to talk about the Mauro Diaz injury, which is obviously devastating. But first, I want to talk about more important FC Dallas related news, which is Carlos Ruiz with the equalizer.
That was his first MLS goal since 2011 or so, because he went scoreless in his DC United stint.
He almost went minuteless in his DC United stint
he
too.
spent most of his time at the DC Slices truck behind the north goal. I want to just paint the picture. Seth and I were writing after the game in a completely empty the media cafeteria at RFK, and it happened, and both of us literally got up. I threw a chair across the room. And Seth dropped to his knees and turned skyward in celebration.
We were screaming.
Literally screaming. I think there's something about Carlos Ruiz. You just want to see him succeed.
I'd like to think that we would have acted that way even if the media room was totally full.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, Stephen Goff.
You knock over his chair.
Yeah, exactly. Mauro Diaz, man. Jesus, talk about a gut punch.
Yeah. He has been so big for them all season, but particularly over the last couple months, you really get the sense that once they lost Fabian Castillo, that he recognized he needed to step up. His performance in the Open Cup final in particular, that's one of the best individual games I've seen from an MLS player all season. It was
he's really stepped up since you wrote them off entirely after Castillo got injured.
I actually wrote a column for Goal saying that they still had.
Come on, just take credit for it. That Mauro Diaz wrote your read.
Yeah, no.
Listen to the podcast.
The column I wrote was that they had what it takes to still make a run, and it was a shame that Castillo wouldn't be there for it. But the issue is that once they lost Castillo, there was no more wiggle room. They were one more injury to a key player away from just being devastated. I mean,
again, I laugh every time somebody says anything like this because it's MLS,
right?
I could see Dallas without those 2 players winning.
I mean, DC United in 2012 had Dero injured and Chris Pontius. Basically, he was operating at 60%, and then got injured as well. And they still made a run to the conference final and almost made MLS Cup. And
they should have made they got robbed basically on a red card
And that was a team similar to Dallas, missing their 2 best attacking players, and they still went on that run. So there's a precedent there.
Do we have any idea how Dallas might go about trying to replace Diaz? Because the thing about
he's going to be out for 8 months, first of all, so they got to worry about the first 3 or 4 months of next year.
Yeah, let's focus on the short term because they can't add any more players. So how do they replace him only using players on this roster? The thing about FCD is that they do have 3 pretty good central midfielders, and they usually only start 2 of them. The problem is all 3 of them are more defensive-minded in Gruezo, Ulloa, and Kellen Acosta. Do you maybe move one of them into a more advanced position, or do you do some other sort of reshuffle?
I think you sort of tweak that formation, and I think this is what they will do. You tweak the formation, which is sort of a 4-2-3-1, and you make it more of a true 4-3-3. You play your wingers a bit more advanced, and you roll with those 3 guys as your central midfielders, probably with Acosta as the most advanced of the 3, which is a role he can play. You think of him as a D-mid, particularly because he gets used as a fullback by the national team, and you really focus on his defensive qualities, but he can play a good pass. He has a bit of a finishing touch. He can play that more advanced role. He would be kind of like the way the Rapids played Jermaine Jones as a number 10. That's kind of the setup that this would remind me of. You could also go to a 4-4-2 and put Teshio Akindele or Pescadito in up top alongside Aruti.
Yes.
Maybe it's time to finally move Chris Seitz into that playmaking role that we've all salivated to see him in.
Mauro Rosales is, I guess, the most traditional backup they have. You could maybe play him as a true playmaker, but I think we'll probably see them bring Ayoa into the fold. That seems like the most logical.
Thomas, you really are the brains of this podcast. You know that? I mean, you're with me here on this,
I know
right,
that.
Seth? Like,
Yeah.
He's the brains. I'm the brawn. You're the body.
I don't really know what I really bring to the table.
Sex appeal, dude.
Yeah. Which doesn't really go very far on a podcast.
Well, that's the whole point. They can't see you.
Unless I have a sexy voice.
All right. Story I haven't told you guys. At RFK on Sunday, I had a fan walk up to me and ask if I was Seth. And then he walked away. Stop. And I was like, so, no. And I said, like, but I know Seth. And he kind of was like, oh, sorry. Walked away. Stopped. Turned back around.
Are you Thomas?
He was like, are you Thomas?
Nice.
And I was like, hey. And then he had
You
some.
should have been like, no, I'm Pablo. Yeah.
Then he had some very kind words about the show, and it was much appreciated.
I get like unidentifiable yells from the stands when I'm shooting games. Like I got like, love the podcast, like just from the supporters area. So whoever that was, I appreciate your vocal support.
No one's ever said anything to me, but now
You have
Thomas,
no- you have no
I'm
friends.
gonna count that as like half saying something to me.
Yeah. Anyways, sorry
Pablo,
about
has
that.
anyone ever asked if you're Seth?
No. I think I'm pretty easy. I post a lot of selfies and stuff online, so I'm pretty easily identifiable.
There you go, Thomas. You got to post more selfies.
That's true. There are
Thomas,
a few of those on my Instagram.
Are you capable of making any other face in a picture than the one that you make?
I've mixed it up, but I do have a fantastic smile, so I try to break it out as much as possible.
That's fair. Anyways, what's next?
Let's get into the Nagby situation.
Ugh.
It's a painful one.
Has anybody considered that maybe he just doesn't really want to play?
Soccer
I-
in general.
Or just
I think
for the national team?
I think in general he's a guy who is maybe just a little more laid back and thinks that there are things to life other than soccer. And
That's my point,
He has a young
Yeah.
young family and would rather spend time with them than get worked up over not playing for
Like
the
to hear
national
that, did you
team.
see that Alexi tweeted out Friedel's quote that it's an honor when you're called up, it's not a do I go or not, you go. I just think that's sort of absurd.
I think the travel requirements, it can get pretty ridiculous, particularly he's coming from Portland, going all the way down to Cuba to maybe not play. He had just done that in September. I don't think he played in either qualifier, went all the way from Portland to the Caribbean
And
to
given
Florida.
where Portland's in do or die territory playoff wise,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back and just kind of give an overview of the situation. Jurgen Klinsmann called up Darlington Nagbe for the U.S.'s 2 friendlies earlier this month, and Nagbe turned down the call. There were some conflicting reports whether he had an injury or whether he just straight up turned it down. Grant Wall had a report today that it was actually Nagbe saying that he didn't want to go. He wasn't hurt for whatever reason, whether it had to do with the Timbers being in the middle of a playoff chase and not wanting to leave his team, or whether it had to do with the fact that he didn't feel like he had gotten enough of a chance in previous call-ups with the national team. He just straight up said no. And now, Darlington Nagbe, at the age of 26, a guy that national team fans had waited years to see in a national team uniform while he was going through his citizenship process. Now, Darlington Nagbe, after 10 caps, appears like he could be done with the national team, at least.
It worked out well. I mean, it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, it's a tough situation because on one hand, I see Nagbe's point. I feel like he has been shortchanged a bit with the national team. I think he has gotten very sparing opportunities to show what he can do.
Zero starts.
Yes, I think in the build-up to the Copa America, he was showing all the signs that he was capable of being a breakout player for them in that tournament, and then got very little playing time. Jossie Zardes, getting starts game in, game out on the flank. Graham Zusi getting minutes over him coming off the bench. Even in the third place game that didn't really mean anything, limited to a roll off the bench. So I think that experience would be pretty frustrating. Then in the last qualifiers, did not even get into either game when they turned to guys like Kljestan, who I think Kljestan absolutely deserved his chance. But if I'm Nagbe, and I've been a part of the picture for a year playing the same position that Kljestan does, and then Kljestan just waltzes in and immediately gets a start, that would be frustrating to me.
As an injury replacement.
Yes, exactly. As an injury replacement for John Brooks, didn't even make the initial squad. And then guys like Areola and Stanko got into that second game. Basically Nagbe really has not gotten the shot that I think most people who follow the national team think he really deserves, and he has shown signs of being a real impact player if he gets a chance. And on the other hand, sometimes that's the way it goes, and you don't get your chance. Maybe you get frustrated, but you buckle down and you keep the long-term goal in mind, hope that shot will come. And to turn down a call-up for a couple of friendlies when he probably would have gotten minutes. They were pretty short-handed, particularly for the second game. That, I think, is maybe it was an emotional decision, a bit of a rash decision that could come back to bite him, because who knows, maybe he plays well against Cuba, or he plays really well in a start against New Zealand, and suddenly he's in the picture to start against Mexico the same way some of these other players are after those two friendlies. So.
That to me is what makes it most mind-boggling, is the timing of it, and I think that's what Klinsmann is going to remember. I mean, you're literally turning down a call-up before what's sure to be the biggest qualifier the U.S. plays, or one of the two or three biggest qualifiers.
Right.
That to me is either shows there's a lack of understanding on his end about sort of the history and the importance of that game, or just that he doesn't care that much, and which is fine. But you would think that you'd think given the lengths that he went to get on the team in the first place, he would care. My other thing that I wonder is, it's impossible to unlock the brain of Jurgen Klinsmann, but maybe this is, I mean, to me, it's maybe he was just testing Nagbe, or sort of pushing him and seeing if he had the mental fortitude to put up with this kind of stuff, and maybe Nagbe just failed.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that there's some personality issues going on here. Nagbe, kind of the rap on him is that he's a gentle, kind of passive guy, and it's not like he doesn't try when he plays, but maybe lacks a certain bit of killer instinct that other players have.
Yeah, Klinsmann has talked not in relation to Nagbe, but in general, how he wants his players to be mean on the field,
right,
and to have bite, and maybe that's what he doesn't see out of Nagbe.
And this actually sort of reminds me of another famous personality clash that Klinsmann's had with a national team player. Of course, Landon Donovan, who maybe lacked in Klinsmann's eyes some of that meanness, some of the 100% commitment to the cause. Of course, we go back to his sabbatical from the game. We go all the way back to his time in Germany. Didn't really enjoy it there and went back to a more comfortable atmosphere in MLS. And I think you're seeing some of the same personality issues going on now with Nagbe, another guy who lacks maybe that killer instinct, that drive that Klinsmann's looking for. And, in this situation, I think whether you love Klinsmann or hate Klinsmann, I think it's very hard to begrudge him if he doesn't call Nagbe in anymore, because Nagbe has made his choice, and that's that. Yeah,
Klinsmann has not shown a knack for understanding and sort of the ability to forgive people for things, So I think this might have been the last time we see Nagbe in a U.S. kit. for the next year or two.
Yeah, at least when Klinsman's around.
Yeah, I mean, after the World Cup, who knows? He gets a reboot.
I'll throw one more example
Ben
out there.
Olsen's national team tenure begins.
I'll throw one more example out there that maybe is a more optimistic perspective. Timmy Chandler, I think it's fairly it's commonly assumed that he turned down some call-ups to the national team, that he had some injury troubles.
Yeah, but he has German heritage. It's totally different.
But and Klinsmann froze him out for a bit, but then after a while they had a talk about commitment to the team, and he still put Timmy Chandler on his World Cup squad. And I wonder if Nagbe could be a similar situation. Maybe Klinsmann freezes him out for a while, but then maybe he gives Nagbe a January camp invitation and tells him, all right, you're starting from square one again, but you can work your way into this team. Maybe that's the type of situation that could develop that would give us hope of seeing Klinsmann and Nagbe together on the national team again.
Yeah, you would, if you're looking at it optimistically, view it in that light. And certainly Nagbe is talented enough where you could see him getting a second chance there where maybe somebody else wouldn't.
Yeah, there's at least one other player who I know faced a similar situation for the U.S. back in the previous cycle, where he basically started turning down call-ups because he was frustrated with not getting chances to actually see the field. This was a player who wasn't as talented as Nagbe, so I think that's kind of a big difference there. Sorry to be vague.
Sorry, I was reading
Pablo
this.
was texting someone?
No, I was actually reading the WBA contract extension article.
The same
cool,
report from
cool
Grant.
comment, Seth. Is your name Seth? Thomas. My
Yeah.
bad. Yeah. Now Seth is reading. This podcast has just completely come undone. Nobody
All right,
even cares about it.
I'll keep us rolling along. Let's talk about Decision Day.
Dun dun dun.
Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, who will win? The supernova of
I mean actual Decision Day.
Yes.
the one that actually matters to this
Yeah.
country's future. MLS Decision Day.
Yes.
This
Decision
and
Day.
another country's future. Don't forget Canada.
Right.
Of course. Yeah.
I think the way that these Decision Day matches are set up, both in MLS and European leagues, it makes it so it can be a lot of excitement and a lot going on, or it can be really boring because you have a bunch of meaningless games all happening simultaneously.
Right.
It's like a happy,
well, at
happy
least
medium this year. I
You
think.
can
Yeah.
just tune out the meaningless games, like
That's what we've
Chicago
been doing
Fire.
I haven't watched one San Jose Earthquakes game all year. I mean,
Lucky you. But I think this year's Decision Day for MLS, there are a number of intriguing scenarios. There's still Supporters Shield up in the air. There is there are a few Western Conference teams battling for a playoff spot. In the East, you have battling for seeding. There's a lot still on the table.
Yeah, and as we mentioned earlier, if the New England Revolution wins 6-0 and Philadelphia loses 6-0, the Revolution could leapfrog them for the final playoff spot. So keep an eye out for that.
That would be the greatest moment in Philadelphia Union franchise history if they managed to lose that.
I would pay $1,000 to see that happen.
Yeah. A few years ago, the San Jose Earthquakes were in the same situation. They entered the day like they needed to make up 9 goals in differential, and I say just go for it. Like throw the keeper up
Completely.
for corner
Why not?
kicks from the
Yeah, like
beginning.
everything, like-
yeah, just play like a old school like 2-4-5 formation or. That's too many players. But
All right, Caligiuri, calm
Yes.
down. But really, it's a 4-5-3-1 with Brian Boswell at the back.
all
right,
good times.
Yeah.
The Western Conference picture is really interesting because you have Real Salt Lake, Seattle, Sporting KC, Portland, 3 spots for those 4 teams, and then the way it shakes out, the seeding could be drastically different based on different scenarios. There's home field at stake. I think all of those teams, you want to avoid being the 6th seed and having to travel to LA for your knockout game. The Galaxy also are just locked in as the number 3 seed, so they'll presumably be able to just rest some guys this weekend and fully focus on their knockout game. And then in the East picture, I mean, DC United playing for home field in the knockout round, and historically that's been a huge deal. The home field advantage famously doesn't matter much at all once you get to the 2-game series, but in those one-off knockout matches, it's huge. The winning percentage for the home team is pretty high. So
Yeah, and we saw DC United take advantage of that last season.
yeah, DC United entered the playoffs coming off a 5-0 loss to Columbus. They were completely out of form, still were able to take advantage of home field and knock out New England in the knockout round.
I mostly remember that as the game that Bobby Boswell tried to kill Juan Agudelo off the ball.
I remember it as the game where Jermaine Jones tried to kill Mike Gargano.
Oh my God. I
That game
completely forgot about that.
also had the Agudelo bicycle kick. That was a good game.
That Jones Geiger incident was like the only time I thought, like, while it was happening, you looked at Jones and you just thought, "Oh my God, he's gonna like kill him! Like he's literally gonna
Yeah.
kill the referee on the field."
Yeah.
Like, it was incredible.
And it's now been 2 straight playoffs where DC United has been involved in a game where a player attacked a referee.
Wow,
So
you gotta keep that streak going.
let's
you know?
let's hope that
See-
we can make it 3 in a row.
Yeah,
Looking at you, Colin Martin.
just charges off the bench on crutches or something like that.
I
You
think
know?
he would.
Like,
Well, he never makes the 18, so he would actually have to charge out of where the
who is
players
the
sit.
he
which
played a
DC
couple weeks
United
ago.
player is the most likely to attack a referee in the final game of this? Let's just toss a name out there.
I'd say Marcelo Sarvas.
Maybe Boswell.
Most likely to attack.
Voted most likely to attack a referee in your knockout round game.
Andrea Mancini.
God, he just like zip line. So, Steven Streff from Black and White United tells me that Andrea Mancini made the bench for the Cosmos
Oh man,
this past week. Still hasn't played for them. He's fell into a good thing. I think they're probably going to win the NASL title this year. So,
Aren't they moving? And if they have a home game, they're going to have to move it
yeah,
somewhere.
because they like couldn't book their home field at Hofstra.
Is that really what it was?
Is there like
There's like an event. There's like a lacrosse game or something like that.
See, I actually
kidding.
thought it was the opposite. Like they wanted to be at a better venue for a championship game.
Negative. They just couldn't get their own home field reserved.
God,
Like
NASL.
somebody else had rented out the shelter for a picnic, so they have their birthday party somewhere else. You know.
Yeah, NASL, catch the fever.
What about on the attacking the ref thing? Dark horse of Taylor Kemp. just
just
loses his shit
like
randomly.
roundhouse left-footed kick. Like,
Yeah, because you know what you can do with that left foot, man. Jesus.
Yeah. I'm
The
trying to
answer
think.
is obviously Ben Olsen, anyways. So
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Anyways,
Some Twitter questions, both from Holden Crib. One is Alan Gordon the most likable player ever.
no, that's Diego Valeri. Continue.
He is very likable.
2, is there a better social media marketing team than Cosmo and LA Galaxy?
They're very good. I think the Galaxy has the lock on best MLS
They-
social
They
media.
dedicate real resources.
Yeah,
to it,
they
and
have
you can
like
tell.
they have like official team videographer.
They have like
They-
2
they-
or 3
like,
photographers.
They
Yeah.
hire good people.
Their
Yeah.
mascot like actually takes an interest in what he does.
Thomas
/ tweets out links to high-speed police chases.
/ presents Long Tan with a birthday taco
And
when,
you got-
when the Galaxy play Arizona United.
Then
in
you got Chris
USL.
Thomas, and that's this whole other ball of wax that I can't even get into.
Yeah. Also
Registered
speaking
sex
of
offender, and then we
speaking of
Wait, what?
Alan Gordon and the LA Galaxy social and marketing team, his incredible goal this weekend against Houston, where basically someone cleared the ball off him and it went in.
Most Alan Gordon goal ever.
The Golazo
the
tweet?
Galaxy tweeted a GIF, whatever you want to say, of that goal and said "Golazo" in all caps. And
you had to love that like 2 or 3 people who took it seriously
Yeah,
and tweeted
yeah,
back
yeah.
like that's not a golazo. Like, you know.
yeah, you're
Oh,
always
thanks for
gonna,
the correction. All right, we'll print a retraction on that. You know.
always going to be a few of those.
We got anything else? Time for this replay? No,
We
No.
could
No.
discuss the NWSL final.
we could.
Such heartbreak.
Yeah, that sucked.
Left it late.
Poor Washington Spirit, leading 2-1 late in the second period of extra time.
It's good to see
Last
that.
gasp equalizer, lose on PKs.
It's good to see that the like choke job thing transcends gender in DC sports teams. You know,
The aspect of this that if you don't follow the Spirit that you maybe missed is the 3 players who missed the PKs are the only 3 originals still on the Spirit.
Oh.
That's unfair. Like,
Yeah, like the 3 players who have put the most time and effort into sort of building that organization, making them a playoff contender, and that's tough.
I didn't watch, so I'm just going to go my running theory that it was karma for the Rapinoe anthem incident at the Soccerplex.
You're not the first person to make that point.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. Anyways,
Thus
anything else in hour 4 of the show we want to tackle?
Thus endeth the NWSL final discussion.
Yeah, exactly.
One more question here on Twitter. Do we think Bill Hamid has a personality conflict with Jurgen? No.
I think Jurgen has judged Bill a little harshly, but I don't think there's a personality conflict. When Jurgen listed off his goalkeeper depth chart and said Bill was behind,
how are you going to tell me that somebody like
Yarbrough
Yarbrough is better than Bill Hamid?
Yeah.
I mean, it just doesn't like.
I'll say that friendly against New Zealand, Yarbrough and Bingham didn't exactly shine, so maybe Hamid helped his case by not playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
Maybe worked his way all the way up to number 5 on the
Yeah.
depth chart.
That's it. It's
All
over.
right, that's it.
Let's put this out of its misery.
Thanks for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. We will speak with you next week.